Hi, I'm Andrew Holzman. I'm calling this video Your Defenses, Your Prison. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. You can reach me at 317-457-8668 or aholzman2@comcast.net. I work with individuals, couples, and families. Thank you for listening to this video. Like I said, your defenses, your prison. I have trust issues, and so do you. Everyone has trust issues. Everyone has communication issues. Everyone finds some way to defend themselves against their pain. Defenses are very necessary, or else we'd be a very raw and open wound walking around. And defenses can be very necessary, like I said, but they also can be a prison. And I wanted to talk about two defenses that people use in relationships that work but eventually can break down. So if everyone has trust issues, and trust is one of those things that's talked about in relationship therapy almost as much as when people come in, they talk about communication. We don't communicate. We don't communicate. I don't trust. People are scared. They're anxious. They're wary of being vulnerable, of being naive, of being exposed, of being abandoned, of looking foolish. So if you don't trust, you might just be safe. It's understandable when people are hurt that they find ways to take care of themselves. They find ways to defend themselves against being hurt again. And trust, not trusting, is a good way to do that, or seemingly a good way to do that. So if you don't trust, you can kind of put one foot in, but not put both feet into the relationship. Of course, that can lead to problems later on, and that's what I want to talk about and how that becomes a difficulty. It's hard to just tell somebody to trust and trust totally. I think what we're talking about here, though, is examining what kind of things you don't trust the person about and how you could work on being more open. And there are two ways that people don't trust. They don't trust by being controlling, and they don't trust by closing off. So being controlling in a relationship means I'm going to figure out how to get everything I want and get all my needs met. And typically a person who is controlling is a very strong-willed, very strong individual, maybe a black and white thinker, and typically they will find someone who is a little less strong, a person who is going to give up some of that individual control for the perceived safety of being in a relationship with someone who's strong and powerful. And the difficulty there is, of course, that nothing is totally controllable. There's no way that in a relationship you can always get your needs met in the way that you want those needs met. And so the person is going to be frustrated who's trying to control, and they're going to be angry because the other person may not do things the way they want them to do, whether it's keep the house in a certain way, or be timely, or be as loving, or be as touchy-feely, or be as independent, or not spend money, or spend too much money, or not spend money in the way that they want them to. There's going to be lots of ways that control will be frustrating for the controlling individual in a relationship. You can't control another person. That would be pretty impossible. It's also, if you're a controlling person and you pick someone who's less strong, then this person may grow into the role of being a person who is stronger and is frustrated with being controlled, and may have a voice and may not be as timid and as weak as they appeared at one point. So that seems to happen with people who become wealthy and then marry a second time to someone a lot younger, and this person seems to be someone who looks up to them and kind of is very has stars in their eyes for this person who's powerful and wealthy and seems to have their act together. Well, if you're controlling and you're used to things a certain way, and this other person is giving up some of their control to be in this relationship, over time, and sometimes pretty quickly, that person goes, wait a minute, I'm not getting my needs met. I'm not getting the intimacy that I need, or the connection that I need, or the safety that's beyond the physical or financial safety. And that seems to be a big issue, that there's other levels of safety. There's other levels of what people need. Having a great house and, and 2 cars and all the things that go along with financial safety and wealth, and having a life that's very plentiful is a wonderful thing. But if there's not the emotional connection, if there's not the emotional safety, as it were, then that relationship will have problems and may even break down. So when that person starts to notice, the second person, the so-called weaker person in this, starts to notice their pain, they are going to start to have a voice. And what's that going to do to the relationship? Well, the other person is used to being the boss, and now all of a sudden this person is chafing at this control, and there's going to be fights, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be problems. And if the person can have a voice, if the second person can have a voice, they may act out. So sometimes I will see in counseling a relationship that's gone on for years, and the person who was the weaker, so to speak, or the person who was being controlled, has an affair, because they are so frustrated trying to get across to the other person the need for emotional intimacy, the need for not working so much and being connected and being there for them. And they give up, and they just go out and find someone else, or they shut down. And so the person who was a strong-willed person is going, what happened? All of a sudden we were going along great, and then, a year ago she changed. Well, what happened was she got to a level where she finally said enough is enough, because in her indirect, possibly, or weak way, maybe it wasn't weak, but in her indirect, at least, way, she was saying this is not working, probably for years and years and years. That's what I see in relationships. So the person who we would label as codependent, the person who is very focused on the other person, doesn't know how to really push it until they leave, or they have an affair, or they do something very extreme. And it could work either way. It could be a man, it could be a woman, but when people feel controlled, or on the other side, if they feel criticized and judged, they may act out and have another relationship or leave. So control as a defense, as a way to handle your pain, certainly can work for a while, but it certainly breaks down after a while, and in terms of relationships. Another choice that people make to handle their pain is to disconnect. And by disconnecting, you're saying, okay, well, I can handle anything. I can put up with anything. It's the other side of the coin here, where the person is letting things go and compartmentalizing their pain. So they're being very easygoing, they're being very gentle, they're being very accommodating in the relationship. And that's nice, and that's wonderful in itself. But if you're accommodating too much, and you're letting too many things go, and you're compartmentalizing too much, those compartments will fill up. And if those compartments fill up, what happens? Well, at some point you're going to go, I'm letting a lot go here, and I'm in a lot of pain. If you have some insight, you're going to be aware that your needs are not getting met. And you're abdicating responsibility to yourself. You're abdicating the need to get your needs met and to get intimacy. And if you can't express yourself with conviction or express yourself at all, then the other person is going to take advantage of you. And the alternative to expressing yourself is a quiet, frustrating, lonely prison. And the prisoner in that situation endures. They just endure. And if they're enduring, that's not very loving, that's not very intimate. They're not getting their needs met, and they're going to be in pain. It's hard, of course, because to speak up entails the possibility of conflict, possibly abandonment. It entails a lot of issues which are very scary for a person who's learned to keep quiet. So you have to be ready to have some conflict. And if you can have conflict differently than your fear, which might be part of what you learned in your childhood, possibly your mother or your father was very, very angry or very, very scary with their anger. And so anger often is perceived as this very scary thing. It doesn't have to be. Conflict is part and parcel of what a relationship should have in it. Some conflict is very good, is very necessary. Defining who you are, being able to say no sometimes is even developmental. Children learn to say no, to define who they are and who they are not. And so adults should learn to, in a relationship, say no, to define what they like and what they don't, to stand up for themselves. Easy to say all of this, but it's hard to do. Because again, those fears of loss, of abandonment, of conflict, of being uncomfortable, of coming home from a hard day at work and having to work on the relationship, that's a struggle. And part of the reason why people come into counseling, into therapy, is because they don't know how to do that in a good way. They either are blowing up at each other and being destructive, or they're shutting down and not getting what they want to talk about on the table. So, like I said, those are two ways that people handle their pain and their trust issues. One is trying to make things happen the way you want them to control things. And another way is to let things go. And both of those work. They do work, but they don't work forever. And if you are in a relationship where you're noticing those things are happening and you would like to talk about it, please give one of the gifted therapists at Family Tree a call. You can give me a call, like I said, at 317-457-8668 or aholzman2@comcast.net. I'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you for listening to this video. Your defense is your prison, and talk to you soon.